So this is one of those stories in the gospel that we think we know really well, that we've heard 1,000 times, and it really helps to then just step back or to dive in and just to take a little bit of a deeper look. Now, it's not possible actually in the time we've got this morning to go into all of the really interesting and important details of the story. So I want to just pick out a few. The first thing I wanted to mention is that we talk about today as the Feast of the Epiphany. The word epiphany means a revelation or the manifestation, the appearing of something or someone divine. That's what the word epiphany means. And so this is the appearing, the revelation, the revealing of God to these people, these wise men. We'll get to that in a moment. And the significance of that, because of course they don't see, even though they've been on this incredible journey, and we'll come to the star in a moment, they've been on this incredible journey, they don't see amazing portents in the heaven when they arrive at their destination. They see a little baby. This is why this feast is still such an important part of the Christmas story, because it's the revelation of God incarnate, of the Word made flesh, of God becoming one of us. So who were these guys? Who are the wise men? The tradition has, as you can see in our crib, that there were three of them. And so they've got names, Balthazar, Melchior and Caspar. But we actually don't know. The text here doesn't describe them as kings. They're portrayed as kings in our crib. The word used is magi, which is the plural of the word magus. And that's not a Greek word. You know that the New Testament was written in Greek, but this is a word that's been brought from Persia. It's a Persian word. And it describes there's no exact kind of similarity, but you might sort of amalgamate astrologers and astronomers and even kind of like scientists in a way to capture these figures. These are wise men, as the passage is sometimes translated. And what we want to really pay very careful attention to is we're told they come from the east, which is where Persia is. So presumably that's the journey that they've been on, from Persia to Bethlehem to see the Christ child. They're not Jewish, so they don't know all of the stories of the Old Testament. They don't know that for the people of Israel that they were waiting for a Messiah, that they were waiting for a king, that they were waiting for a particular kind of king, the king of the Jews, who would actually be in some way divine. The people of Israel had passages in their Old Testament, especially in the book of Daniel, that referenced a king who would return, a true king in the line of King David, so part of the kings of Israel, but he would be the true king of Israel, the new and definitive king of Israel, and he was in some way a divine figure. But these wise men, coming from a different part of the world, they're not Jewish, they don't know anything about this tradition. For them, they are brought to come before Jesus, the baby Jesus. They're brought to him because they follow this star. It's interesting. You remember the shepherds in the Christmas story? What happens to the shepherds? How do they know that God has become one of us in this little baby? Angels appear to them. And in the Jewish world, to the Jewish mindset, that's natural, that's normal, because angels appear to reveal God to the people. It's not part of these wise men's experience of how they understand the divine, and God appears to them, or God leads them by a star, which they were used to following, they were used to studying, they were used to observing. There's something really significant here, really important, and that is that God speaks to us, especially in the first stages, the initial stages of our faith journey. God speaks to us in ways that we're going to understand and in ways that we're used to. There's a really interesting phenomenon happening in the world at the moment where Muslims are becoming Christians. They're converting to Christianity, and it's because they're having dreams of Jesus. It's a really well-attested phenomenon. Now, the interesting thing about that, I think, is that the way that the Muslims understand how God speaks is that God has already spoken. He said everything he needed to say in and through, first of all, the Jewish prophets. Even Jesus is an important figure, a prophetic figure in Islam, but then in Muhammad. They have no sense that God can keep speaking except in dreams. And so Muslims are having dreams of Jesus. And because that's how they understand that God can speak to them. For Jewish people, it's angels. For these wise men from the east, it's this star that leads them. It's a sign of the divine that leads them. What does that mean for us today? It means that God can speak to us in ways that we don't expect, but in ways that actually still speak to our life and experience. I've been listening to and paying attention to a number of different stories from people in recent times, and one of the things that all journeys of faith, and one of the things that they point to is that they talk about these uncanny coincidences that would pop up, situations and circumstances that would happen where they go, this happened and then this happened, and they couldn't have happened naturally, or it's a strange coincidence, or it seems very surprising to them. That just as they were talking about this with one person, someone else would bring up the same thing. As they were thinking about a certain aspect of the meaning or importance of life, somebody would speak into that in some way. God will do whatever he needs to do in order to lead us, to draw us to him. And so for the wise men, they're drawn by the ways of God that they understand, this leading, this mysterious star guiding them. But where does it bring them to? It brings them to Jesus. It brings them to the Christ child. You see, the epiphany is that there are all these little ways in which God might reveal himself, all of these small ways, important ways. The star mattered, the angels mattered, the other way, the dreams that Muslims are having today, they matter. But what do they all point to and lead to and draw us to? The good news of Jesus. He's the fullness of God's revelation. If we want to know what God is like, we're to look to the person of Jesus. The Christian tradition will always say, you know what, it's possible to know that God exists by looking at the beauty and design and wonders of the universe. To know that God exists is one thing, but that's probably the most least interesting thing about God. What's God like? What's God like? Well, to answer that question, we're to look to Jesus. Because he is God made flesh. He is God made one of us. That's why we call him Emmanuel, God with us. God with us. When the wise men arrive, they are given an insight, a revelation, because we're told that they bow down in worship before him. They make the sign of reverence, of allegiance, you might say, of worship to this little child. Something has happened. It's more than just a star leading them. Something's happened inside of them. There's been a revelation deep within. We might call it a movement of the Holy Spirit. And they're able to say that this is what we've been searching for. This is what the heavens have been pointing towards. This is what has led us in all of our searching and journeying to here. So this feast day is a great day for people who are searching and seeking. There's a promise here that if we search and we're prepared to go where the search takes us, it will bring us to the person of Jesus Christ. It will bring us to the one who reveals to us what God is like in the fullness of his love. The final piece that I wanted to just draw out, and as I said, there's so much more we can take from this passage, but the final piece I wanted to draw out is to take note of the three gifts that the wise men give: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And there's a lot that could be made of the symbolism of these gifts, I think. And they've been interpreted and understood in different ways. But I wanted to suggest three, and they're not my own suggestions. These come from Pope Gregory the Great. way back, okay, commenting on this passage. He says the gold, which obviously is something that you give for a king, that's the literal meaning of it, but the symbolic meaning, he says, we're told in the scriptures, he means the Old Testament, that wisdom is like a treasure in the mouth. So the symbol of offering gold to the child Jesus is to say, we want to seek your wisdom. We want to be guided by you. We want you to lead us because you are the wise one. Incense, which we still use today in our liturgy, is a sign of prayer. Okay, it's an ancient symbol. We see it in the Psalms, many other places in the scriptures. It's a sign of our prayers to God. And so the wise men offer their prayers, they pray. And then myrrh, in the ancient world, myrrh was a perfume that you put on a dead body just to make sure that the smell of the decayed person wasn't going to, that wasn't going to upset us or disturb us. And so Gregory says that that's a symbol for us of the need for us to die to ourselves. There's a self-mortification that we need in following Jesus. And so when the wise men offer that, what they're saying is, we're going to deny our selfishness, our self-focus, so that we might be focused on you, the infant child Jesus, the Son of God. That's not a bad way to think about as we start this new calendar year. We're well into our church's liturgical year. But it's not a bad way as we start our calendar year as a nation, as a people, to say, okay, well, what might I bring to God this year? Well, it might be that I offer and bow down before God's wisdom. I surrender my own wisdom. I offer and I want to learn from God's wisdom, number one. That I'm really going to deepen and grow in prayer, number two. And that I will involve and get engaged in things where I deny myself, my own selfishness, so that I might be selfless, so that I might be drawn out of myself and into love. As we celebrate Eucharist then on this great feast, this great day for searchers, let's pray that those of us who are searching, and in a sense that's always all of us, but if you're searching in a particular way, you might pray this morning that you would find what you're looking for, what you're searching for in the infant child Jesus, who is the Son of God made flesh. And let's also pray that we might bring our gifts, gold, frankincense and myrrh, as it were. That's our wisdom, our prayer and our self-denial. We bring them to God in this Eucharist and indeed into each day of our lives.